Transport in the amount of $31,572,453.
Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central, before I allow you to give your opening remarks, which is for 10, 15 minutes, let me outline to our public officers the procedure for today's session. First of all, Honourable Minister, you are allowed 15 minutes to speak, and once you've given that overview, you move the 10 minutes for the passing of the head. You move the head, and then every question you are asked by your colleagues, you will have 5 minutes to respond. And you may also direct any one of your officers to give an appropriate response. To the officers, when you are called on to speak, first of all, I want you to speak directly into the mic, and you give your name and the office you hold within the ministry. Honorable members would know you are allowed a question and 3 follow-up questions. In other words, questions connected to the first one that you have asked. You indicate your desire to speak by raising of the tile so that I can note the order in which you will speak today. Honorable Member for St. Michael West Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly on behalf of all members of the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. Mr. Chairman, in moving the head, I wish to set out the broad policy allocation for the head 27. The members of the team who are assembled from the ministry obviously will be here to support not only the minister, but to tell the country about the work that we do within the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. This year, the request is for 13.1 million, which is broken down into personal emoluments of 10.5 million, goods and services 11.8, recurrent transfer of 9.4 million, and capital expenditure of 7.34 million. Mr. Chairman, we welcome this opportunity to come before you and the nation, not only to give an account of our collective stewardship over the government's soon to be concluded fiscal year 25-26, but also to inform you of our future policies and programs that we intend to execute during the next financial year. Over the next several hours, we will do so fully conscious that the strategies and tactics that we employ must, of national necessity, materialize in the very best interests of all the highly deserving citizens and the varying and associated sectors. Internationally, tourism has become one of the major players in commerce and represents one of the main income sources for many developing countries. This growth has brought increased diversification and competition among destinations, including Barbados. Like countries across the world, tourism provides opportunities for Barbados to create productive and inclusive jobs. It has strengthened linkages between construction, manufacturing, and agriculture, and has provided increased opportunities for economic empowerment. With respect to Barbados, in terms of our performance, the Central Bank of Barbados reported that tourism activity hit an unprecedented level in 2025, supported by increased airlift and robust demand from major markets. We would have seen, for example, from January to December of last year, long-stay arrivals growing by 3.3%, or totaling some 22,970 arrivals for a total of 729,310 visitors, marking the highest figure ever recorded in a single year as compared to 2024, which recorded 704,340 visitors. Growth is predominantly led by the surge in the United States. We've seen arrivals growing by 8.1%. The Canadian market has also recorded some 90,209 visitors over the last year. Europe has also seen increases as well as CARICOM. CARICOM supplied 98,336 visitors for 2025 compared to 92,702 visitors in 2024. We are benefiting from enhanced services regionally through Caribbean areas, Winair and Inter-Caribbean, which also help us to drive our arrival numbers within the Caribbean. As we continue, the central bank has also informed that there was robust performance from the industry. Occupancy would have increased by 1.3 percentage points to 65.3% in 2025, and there's been strong associated increases in room rates and stronger demand for accommodation in Barbados associated in an increase in earnings for the country. Mr. Chairman, the ethos driving the work of the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport has been growth. Over the last financial year, 2025-26, the focus of the ministry was to accelerate growth, and today I'm pleased to report that the ministry, along with the state-owned enterprises under our portfolio, have exceeded our objective. This premise will continue to be the foundation driving the work for the upcoming financial year 2026-27. Indeed, while growth has been the cornerstone, the ministry did not lose sight of the need to improve efficiency, to improve its response time to the sector, and hence deconstruct and reconstruct processes played a major role in such efforts. We are therefore of the firm view that we will continue to execute our work over the next financial year over three broad themes: policy development, legislative action, and delivery of services. We will continue on the policy to implement a number of policies that we believe are critical for not only the expansion of the tourism sector, but also to strengthen our tourism accommodation sector through a number of other initiatives that we will discuss later today. Linkages will also play a significant role in how we advance the thrust in tourism, because linkages will certainly continue to support subsectors within the tourism sector. Legislation, we will have to refine legislation. Certainly, we are going to be introducing a timeshare and fractional ownership bill. There's still the tourist accommodation bill to be discussed, and certainly we will ensure that we continue to work with the Office of the Attorney General to advance and to upgrade and to refine our current legislation. With respect to airlift, I think it's well known to all Barbadians that the ministry has successfully negotiated with major U.S. carriers along with the BTMI to increase airlift capacity to the destination. We've done so, and we've seen the benefits of increased airlift coming out to the United States of America especially. We've also, for example, continued the KLM service, which commenced on October 25 last year, with 3 services via Schiphol. Air Canada introduced a twice-daily flight on Friday and Sunday during the months of November last year. JetBlue added a twice-daily service out of Boston, and that is going well. And Virgin and BA operated the twice-daily services out of Heathrow during the winter. Of course, we have a new contract with Condor, and we will finalize winter of 2026 and 27 as we continue to partner with Tobago on this service into Barbados. We will continue to reposition Barbados as a hub, and of course, Copa Airlines, which started with 1 flight into Barbados, has now gone to 5 flights per week. We are also introducing a number of other services that are currently under discussion, and we hope during the forthcoming financial year to be in a position to make further announcements. The winter cruise season continues to be another record-breaking season for Barbados, with projected cruise arrivals of some 841,570 passengers, sailing at 100% capacity. This compares to the 686,557 arrivals during the winter period 2024-25, marking a 24% increase in cruise passengers. Of course, the country will continue to host in this current and forthcoming winter season a number of new lines, and I must say that the Orient Express will be launching its first ultra-luxury yacht in 2026, and Barbados will be the first home port offering sailings from the port of Bridgetown during the cruise winter season 2026 to 2027 with 7 turnaround calls. Princess Cruises will also increase its presence in the Southern Caribbean during the upcoming winter season, and there are several other cruise ships that currently visit Barbados that will continue to home port out of Barbados, including the Four Seasons yacht. In terms of tourism accommodation, we would have made mention of the fact that tourism continues to be very strong. We are now also seeing the private sector's response to the investment in tourism. The Blue Monkey Hotel, with a total of 28 suites, is due to open in June of this year. Hotel Indigo, with 132 rooms, are already open on the south coast of Barbados, and Royalton, which would add another 220 rooms in June of this year. And of course, there are other projects within the pipeline, not to mention that the Mark Group will now have all of their rooms back in inventory before the end of the winter season. We will obviously continue to monitor what is happening globally. There are some obviously external shocks that we have to prepare ourselves for, not only with respect to political, economic, climatic, or pandemic, but we also have to ensure that we execute and monitor the situation almost daily to ensure that we can have the appropriate decision-making to respond to any decisions that confront us and any situations that we have to respond to. As we well know, tourism is the fastest sector globally to respond to after any major shocks in the sector, and therefore we will continue to monitor events and respond accordingly. It is also critically important that we focus on the division, the International Transport Division of this ministry. It is the invisible infrastructure that makes everything else possible. Every visitor who lands at the Grand Lams International Airport, every container of goods that clears the port of Bridgetown, every cargo flight authorized, every aircraft safely guided through our airspace, all depends on the institutions, the regulations, and the people and the capital investments that sit under this division. The Grand Lams International Airport, Mr. Chairman, will embark on the Barbados $120 million airport expansion project commencing this forthcoming financial year, and we'll talk about that a bit later today. We are going to be investing in our human resources with the continuation of training the Air Navigation Services Division. In the estimates for this year, provision has been made for the training of additional air traffic controllers, both on and off island. We intend to commence training for 2 batches of air traffic controllers, and the staff complement for the air traffic controllers will be increased. The Aeronautical Information Services Department will also benefit from an increase in staffing, and the ministry intends to train 15 officers within the Aeronautical Information Services Division and to address the deficit within the Air Traffic Controllers Division. The CAF loan of $17 million will be invested to upgrade equipment for the Air Navigation Services Department, and we will go through that, including the new MSSR, which is the Monopole Secondary Surveillance Radar, and the port office course will continue with their investments. But I should also let the country know that as part of the port efficiency meetings that we've been having and a lot of the efficiency initiatives that we've implemented, that the port now benefits from extended opening hours for container delivery and receipts from June of last year, on Tuesdays and Thursdays working from 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. and Saturdays from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. A second exit lane was added to the north gate of the Customs with cooperation of the north gate with the cooperation of the Customs Department. We have a new 260 vehicle holding area established out of the port to reduce congestion. The acquisition of the massive property for $11.1 million, again to provide for additional overflow storage of cargo and storage of vehicles. And Gaba Lodge is currently in use, and that also helps us with the overflow of some 40. So, Mr. Chairman, as I conclude my opening remarks, The ministry remains steadfast in its mandate, and I wish, obviously, as I make these opening remarks, to thank the board's management and staff for their very important contribution to helping the ministry continue striving towards realizing its vision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with that, I beg that Head 27 stand part.
Thank you. Honourable member for St. James South.
Thank you, Chair. And let me start by congratulating the ministry and its various units and partners for the tremendous work that you've done and the tremendous results that you've created for Barbados. We could not feed our people, look after ourselves, and stay afloat were it not for the tremendous work and the results of that work for us in the area of tourism. My questions today will focus primarily on the changing face of tourism. I know that because we are in a world where there is a constant evolution of how things are done, what is done, and then international dynamics have a tremendous impact on how we're going to keep approaching our tourism. It means that as a country, we're going to have to keep pace with those changes, and we're going to have to come up with ways to respond. And so I want to hear from the ministry, what are some of the things we are facing in relation to tourism, and how are you preparing to be able to respond? I also know that a lot of that response will require the input of other partners, of other stakeholders, that the nation has to be able to walk with you in relation to the changes, otherwise they will not be successful. So I want to understand what are some of those things that are required from the various stakeholders that we can help to continue to make tourism work for Barbadians. And in relation to the benefits of tourism, I know that people have been projecting a slightly negative impression about the value of tourism to small nations like ours, as though we could just dispense with it and quickly erect something in its place that can do the same work. So I want to ask if you could outline the benefits for the broader population, whether you're talking about employment, whether you're talking about entrepreneurship, whether you're talking about economic linkages. So if you could share that with us, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I thought you would also have given yourself and your ministry credit for the hospitality gateway initiative that you've started, and perhaps that is but one example of how we can partner or work together. That initiative will certainly augur well for the future development of hospitality, and I thank you and your officers for doing that. As it relates to the question, obviously, I'll start where you ended in terms of the impressions of tourism. The ministry would have conducted a survey through CADRIS to get opinions from Barbadians as to how they view tourism and how it benefits them. It is always very important from a policy position to ensure that you have the views of a population. We are also, as you're well aware, investing heavily within the tourism sector. Private investors are also investing heavily, and therefore it is important that we have the views of the community. It is the workers, it is the stakeholders, all others who contribute to the success of this Ministry of Tourism, who will certainly have to help guide and inform policy-making decisions. And those stakeholders will continue to be valued by this ministry, and we will continue to ensure that we have their opinions and that their opinions are taken into consideration. We certainly will have to navigate some headwinds coming out of the current environment, what is happening. I must tell you that, as I indicated before, that tourism is also the fastest sector to respond to any crisis or to respond to after any crisis. And therefore, as we've seen with the pandemic, we are also confident that notwithstanding what is happening, we will be able to respond. Of course, we have to be very mindful of the costs of fuel. Barbados has had, within the last 2 years, significant growth coming out to the United States market. As a result of the growth coming out to the United States market, we have a lot of US carriers coming into Barbados. If travel sentiment continues to decline, that will cause a problem for Barbados. And also increase airlift into the region. So we are going to continue to monitor what's happening within the international environment. Within the ministry, we have a situational response team that we sit down, we monitor events almost daily, and we respond accordingly. I give you and all other members, all other honorable members, the assurance that as we see developments, we will respond, and we will definitely ensure that our officers who are based in the market, that they too have the leadership from us in Barbados to respond to such. What I would like to do now is to give the opportunity to my permanent secretary in the Ministry of Tourism to also give further response and clarity. PS.
Thank you, Minister. My name is Francine Blackman, Permanent Secretary, Tourism. And I want to thank you, Minister, for the question. And tourism, the sector is predominantly women. Across the world, not only in Barbados. And one of the things that we have to do in the sector as we respond to the changes, certainly the drive in Barbados for growth, is to make sure that we have sufficient skills on the ground, and that will be done through training. Minister already referred to the Gateway Training Program initiative by your ministry, but we're also looking at, apart from the softer skills in terms of customer service and so on, we're also looking at improving, continuous improvement of the skills sets of our chefs. And because we position the island as a luxurious destination, we need to make sure that we have the skills that are commensurate with what we're selling. So that is an area that will continue to be of the focus. Minister referenced a survey, and that was deliberately done because we wanted to make sure that the policies and initiatives that we were pursuing in the ministry was having, we wanted to understand the impact of the Barbadian public when it touches the ground. And that has helped us to understand that Barbadians still have a good, feel-good response basically to tourism. We recognize that we wanted to be ahead of the game because we know in some areas of the world, Greece, Spain, and so on, there's overcrowding. So we wanted to make sure that we put positions in place to preempt any such outcome in Barbados. So we wanted to get the pulse of the people, and the feedback so far has still been positive based on that survey. They do recognize that we need to have improvements in signage, and we have started the conversations with the Ministry of Transport and Works to be able to look at signage across the island, because including things like QR codes and so on that can provide additional information than just the mere sign. So that is something that we will be working on. And we recognize too that we may have to look at how we can improve or increase the labor force, because there is a bit of competition, I may say, in terms of persons looking to continue to improve themselves may decide that they would prefer to work on a cruise ship. So oftentimes you do have cruise ships who would have scouts for labor in Barbados, and that sometimes could create some tension because you have the hoteliers who also need that same labor. So this is an area that we'll be paying close attention to, and working with our stakeholders to come up with solutions as to the best way to treat to specific shortages that could pertain in the sector, or pertain in the sector. I hope I answered your question.
If you could then speak to, I know that we are looking to attract several new hotels and the demand is heavy, and I'm happy to report to you that Hospitality Gateway has attracted some 2,000 applicants. So we'll be coming to you to help us work with the hotels as well, to be able to accommodate them in the training. But employment is one major benefit for Barbadians and for the economy. The issue of the linkages of tourism into the wider economy in terms of producing opportunities for entrepreneurship, so that small businesses can get in and link up and benefit from the spill-off, as well as the linkages into the other operating sectors. So if you could share with us what is happening on that front, so that I think COVID helped Barbadians to understand that when tourism shuts down, everything shuts. And that tourism is really our business, and all of us have to play a part. But I think sometimes they are not aware of how the linkages directly get to them. So if you could share on that, I think it would be helpful.
Thank you, Honourable Member. You will recall that as part of the strategic policy intent within the ministry, that we would have put together a linkages council, which we took to the cabinet approved it, and is currently in operation. The linkages council, we recognize if we are going to generate more revenue from the tourism sector, we not only have to focus on linkages, but we also have to focus on visitor spend. And with that in mind, we established a linkages council, which is spread across stakeholders and also representatives from within the government. We did so. We also appointed a very distinguished lady who has worked with an international organization in Barbados, and the permanent secretary will also give you some more information on that. But what we did is that what we did by establishing the council was recognizing that we need more manufacturing, more agriculture, and other services to be sold within the tourism sector. We also have a situation, for example, with cruise tourism. We have to focus on how do we encourage cruise ships to buy more from Barbados, and they want to buy more from Barbados. But obviously there's issues of consistency, of quality and delivery that we have to get right first. Because when you're on a cruise ship and you're serving maybe 15,000 meals per day and you procure equipment, you have to ensure that you have all of the commodities ready for delivery, and consistently so. So we are looking not only at driving tourism earnings from visitor spend when they arrived in Barbados, but we're also focusing on how best we can use the linkages policy that we created within the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport, working with our stakeholders, including ministries, to ensure that we also get a greater take of spend from the cruise ships in Barbados. Some people refer to it as the supply side, and we have to get more of the supply side earnings, and that is what we're about. I'll pause and I'll ask the permanent secretary who leads that council to have some additional words on that. Permanent secretary.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. From the perspective of linkages, the approach that we are taking in the ministry, and as I speak, I'm also going to ask my Director of Research and Planning, Ms. Nicole Aline, to also come down that she can speak to this. But we've taken a holistic approach. We are looking at how, recognizing that tourism, the importance of this sector, and the implications it has for agriculture and manufacturing and to spawn entrepreneurship. We've taken a decision within the ministry to forge and strengthen those linkages between these subsectors, and the council helps to do that. What we're doing is to have the input and ideas filter through from these organizations as well as other ministries to be able to shape tourism policy and programming. And it's not just only in the manufacturing and agriculture, but also in terms of the product, in terms of the attractions. Last year, we reported to this House, we spoke about a study that we did on attractions. This year saw us moving past that to look at implementation. And that study had revealed to us that even though we had a number of attractions in Barbados, they all operated independently. And we needed to have forge closer links between them in order to increase the retention of revenue or spend in the island. So we were able to work with a consultant to devise a strategy as to how we can have specific attractions that already are established become the anchors, and then be able to have others that are emerging or less known be anchored to those established ones, and be able to build a package that allows a visitor to be able to visit an established one and then be able to go around to the others. And that we've evolved them with names like Eco, the Green Pass, for instance. We've called them, there are some that we are looking at developing over in the Scotland district. And this is also to fuse or to promote community tourism, because we believe that the location of these attractions, there is an opportunity for persons within those communities to be able to provide food and beverages, be able to provide trinkets, souvenirs, and so on, and build a cluster of businesses around these attractions. And this is what we're working on in this year. And we should be launching those packages. Certainly will be sold through the BTMI website and other mediums to have those in the market. And that was done certainly with the cooperation and input of the attraction owners to themselves. So it was a collective approach that we took in the ministry to be able to build out so that attractions also benefit in the linkages to strengthen the association of one established versus emerging, or those who would now need to be established. And therefore there's investment opportunities that we also saw emanating from this work that we will be talking about more during this financial year with our constituents. I don't know. Sir?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Aline, and I am the Director of Research and Planning at the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. Thank you, Minister, for the question regarding linkages. And I will follow on from the Minister and the PS to say that our linkages policy is premised on ensuring that we're able to attract as much revenue as is possible from the tourism sector. And we recognize that it's an economic driver and it supports national development. And so we have that policy which was approved by the Cabinet last year, and we're now in the phase of implementing what that policy is intended to do, which is to strengthen the relationships, strengthen the connections between tourism and the other economic sectors. We are starting as an emphasis with agriculture and with manufacturing, and we have hired an individual to implement that policy. Right now, they are looking at what are the gaps that exist. They're meeting with various stakeholders to have those conversations, to have an understanding as to what is required and what is necessary to ensure that we can really strengthen those linkages, and that's going on as we speak. Some of you in the chamber may have already received your correspondence, I may add. And moving on from that will be to empower communities, empower those artisans who are here, because quite often, sometimes we tend to just think of it as food items, but agriculture, and even if we look at gastronomy, goes so much further. How are we looking at it from a restaurant perspective? How are we looking at it from a retail perspective? The various items that can be utilized within the tourism industry, whether it is arts and craft, strengthening the linkage in that subsector as well. So those are the kinds of things that the individual is going to be looking at to see how we can bring those things to the fore, create more authentic offerings for our visitors. We're not chiding the things that are made out of the region or out of the country, but certainly we want to create a platform that showcases the work of our artisans, and that's where we see the linkages comes in, Minister. We had an example, for instance, of a can of sugar, and on that can of sugar was a painting from a local artist. You know, so sometimes we think the only way we can showcase our artists is or the work of our artists is in a gallery, or some other forum like that where the cost may be prohibitive in some instances. But here is an opportunity for that artist to have their work displayed in a different way on a shelf in the supermarket, and in a way that facilitates ease of transport, that it can be taken readily movable. The other important work I will share coming out of this linkages policy is creating a marketplace. We are aware, yes, that there are existing marketplaces, and certainly it is not the ministry's intention to reinvent the wheel in any measure at all. We want to see what exists and see what we can improve upon. So it is creating a space where we have those artisans who are manufacturing persons for that matter, who are making the commodities and putting them in direct connection with those who require those particular services. So we have the opportunity for the exchange of the good and the purchase of that good in a way that is more convenient than what currently exists. And we see that as helping us, as I mentioned before, strengthen that connection and have even greater value added onto the tourism sector. One of the things we find is that there is economic leakage. You asked earlier in your earlier question about benefits, and we know the benefits of the tourism industry. You know, the first one that comes to mind, economic. You know about contribution to GDP, we know about employment and so on, and being a source of national development. And so we want to make sure, though, that the leakage from our foreign exchange perspective is reduced because of the demand we have to import a lot of the items which we require as consumables. So, and I'll wrap up here. One of the key features then is creating that market space where we can reduce that dependency on leakages, where we can create the opportunity for a lot of the unknown players to come to the fore and to be a source of revenue to themselves and generally to the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm hopeful that in this year's crop of community tourism projects that Holders Hill in St. James South and St. James Central will feature, as we have an idea for developing a strong community tourism project. So I would be grateful if I could be informed as to how we can get on the list, because we have a lot of talent, both in terms of cricket and culture, that we would like to bring. I would want to close by just saying I really appreciated the responses because I see more of the linkages that are required between your ministry and what we're doing in the Ministry of Training and Tertiary Education. We definitely need to work together because the Hope Agricultural Institute is there and we want to look at not only the foods we need to grow, but how we're going to agro-process and work on products. And if we could have that linkage with the ministry and your plans, we could further strengthen what we're doing together. But again, thank you and sincere congratulations on the excellent job that you're doing in tourism.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. James North.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let me first of all commend the Honourable Member and his team for the sterling work that they've been doing in guiding our tourism and as well as our international transport and setting many, many, many records that the country continues to be proud about. This morning, very briefly, I want to treat to the issue of airlift, but airlift within the context of the African market. Of course, we continue to attract significant numbers out of our traditional source markets and non-traditional source markets in many respects. And as you know, the country has stepped up its relations with Africa, particularly over the last 7, 8 years, both in terms of our establishment of diplomatic presence on the continent, which certainly has not just driven interest, but put Barbados in the minds of the people on the continent. In addition, of course, we've waived a number of visas for persons on the continent coming into Barbados, and the continent itself is experiencing a high level of growth. And because of all of that, I wanted to find out, one, what are we doing to ensure that there's direct airlift into Barbados from the African market, particularly when I look at these estimates, and what is the plan for this coming financial year to ensure that we're there? And two, what is it that has been stopping us, if anything, in landing direct airlift out of the continent into Barbados? Because I really, really believe that once we can do this, we will continue to diversify our source markets, particularly at a time when we have to ensure that we can fire on all cylinders, which the ministry clearly is doing. So I wanted to get a very clear idea as to what is the strategy with respect to ensuring that we can have airlift into Barbados, and of course, allowing our people in Barbados and the region using Barbados as a logistics and transport hub into the continent to be able to actually get this done.
Thank you, Honourable Member. What I would like to begin by saying is that when I took responsibility for the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport, we immediately went to work on an airlift strategy. The Permanent Secretary would tell you that we sat with, spent some hours going through what we believe to be critical, because I always felt that if you want growth and if we want to increase earnings, we will have to pursue an airlift strategy. We've done so. Phase 1 of the strategy has been executed. We are going into phase 2 of the strategy. With respect to your question on airlift from the African market, the issue for us has been that once you start airlift from a destination, we want to continue and we want to maintain that airlift. Last year, we went to Ethiopia and we met with the group CEO of Ethiopian Airlines. We went and we discussed with him and his team opportunities for us to drive airlift out of the African market. As you're aware, Ethiopian Airlines is one of the top airlines globally. It has new equipment, perhaps the most modern equipment with respect to its fleet. They also have a huge cargo operation, which we believe will be beneficial and can bridge links for travel into Barbados. They have agreed to come to Barbados this year to continue with their research work, which would inform their proposal. While we were there, the Chief Operating Officer of the BTMI, Cheryl Carter, also presented, along with Ms. Diane Sherlin, the business case for Barbados. That was very well received, and we are currently waiting now on Ethiopian Airlines to follow up with a visit to Barbados so that we can concretize an opportunity. What we want to look at as well is the source markets within Africa and the connection hubs within Africa that would allow almost seamless travel to Barbados. And we believe that notwithstanding the distance, that we will succeed. The other opportunity for us with respect to airlift is not only leisure travel, but is also business travel. And we believe that that is also an opportunity for us to exploit. As it relates to cruise as well, there is a huge opportunity for us. We are uniquely aware that there are a lot of Africans who have the wherewithal, who can travel to Barbados, who would wish to come and spend a few days in Barbados and also cruise the Caribbean islands. And that is an opportunity. But as we build out an opportunity with Africa, it will also be an opportunity for us to position Barbados as a hub. We currently have Airpeace, which has a non-scheduled, or what we call a charter service into Barbados. We've had a number of flights coming into Barbados, but we believe that if we want to maximize the benefits and if we want to ensure that we remain and ensure that we have a consistent service from Africa, that we believe very strongly that Ethiopian Airlines, which is the largest carrier, frankly, in Africa, with the widest possible connections, for us to continue to do business with them. As we continue our discussions with Ethiopian Airlines, we'll be in a better position, Honourable Member, to revert to you. Of course, you are very well connected in the African market. And of course, if there are opportunities where we believe that your leverage can help us, we're certainly not shy, and we certainly wouldn't be shy to call on you to help us with your contact. So I give you the assurance that we will continue to drive airlift. I also agree with you with respect to the visa waiver program. And it's not only Africa, because within the ministry, what we've done, we've deployed an officer who's responsible for Africa and the Gulf states, and that officer is based in Kenya. And the opportunity, or will be based in Kenya, let me correct myself, the opportunity, oh, he's there already, PS is correcting me. An opportunity for us not only to build the African airlines also have a lot of connectivity with the Gulf states, and that's also an opportunity for us. But beyond that, the visa waiver program that we have in place not only for Africa, but also for the Gulf states. But I'll discuss the Gulf states in a bit more detail a bit later. But thank you, Honourable Member, for asking the question.
Yep. Thank you also, Honourable Member, for your response. And most certainly, whatever I can do to work with you and your team in helping us to build out the opportunities out of the continent. And the reason why I'm so focused on this, you would recall last year we held a number of meetings, and then the Gooba Awards comes to mind, where a number of persons from the continent flew in. But by and large, unless they lived in North America or directly in Europe, those who came directly from the continent, for example, notwithstanding that they had to, or they don't have to, have a visa to come here, many of the persons who came had to apply for visas because they had to go through jurisdictions that required them to do so. And there were a lot more persons who wanted to come, but couldn't do so for the said reason. And I think we have to move with a level of alacrity, of course, whilst ensuring that we do all the necessaries to make sure that it is not just viable, but sustainable in the medium and long term. But I have a concern that if we don't move with pace, others may take our lunch. That is my biggest concern. So I'm thankful for the assurance that the ministry will ensure that this is something that will be dealt with frontally.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for St. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, I want to echo the sentiments of the member for St. James South and commending you, Minister, and your team. An outstanding job as last year certainly was a exceptional year, and I know that was in many ways due to the very, very hard work of you and your team. In your response this morning to the question placed by the member for St. James South, you would have alluded to linkages and working with communities, community tourism. What I would like to know, in terms of those parts of the island that are, I believe, especially in the rural parts of Barbados, there still remains a number of exceptional experiences that remain untapped, certainly by this ministry. I would want to know with a bit more specifics, because I know you would have alluded to it. What are some of the measures that your ministry is putting in place to engage persons in those communities, and not only engage, but also if there are any grants or incentives that can be made available to persons in those spaces? I'm thinking rural parishes, St. Joseph, St. Andrew, St. Thomas, St. Peter, St. Lucy, where the product is unique. It's not your traditional sun, sea, and sand, but there are experiences in those areas that I'm sure that locals and tourists alike would certainly enjoy. But those areas need significant development. And let me just, if I can put all three of my questions in one, because the first one was what are some of the things that are being done, but in terms of investment into some of our, into the infrastructure down there, for example, the various trails, hiking trails throughout the northern part of Barbados, if there are any plans in the ministry to really develop those trails, signage, with information, signs, and trails that help develop the trails as such. I can think about Mount Hillaby, for example, where unless you are familiar with the space, then you would not necessarily know where Mount Hillaby is, or that the areas, even Mount Hillaby. So if the ministry has plans to really develop some of the signage in those areas. So those are two, the grants, incentives, plans, and any move towards development or investment in those spaces.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As Minister of State within the Ministry of Transport or Works, I hope that we can rely on you, sir, for some additional assistance with respect to signage within the area. So we'll work with you on that one. As it relates to linkages and investments and grants, let me take them one by one, but I'll also ask the Permanent Secretary to weigh in as well. You will recall that the ministry, again, as part of our strategy to build out tourism, we contracted a company called Trove to review our attractions. Barbados has done exceedingly well in tourism. We've had a core of attractions in Barbados, and those attractions have served us well. But the reality is that we also have to seek to build out new attractions. And one of our policy decisions taken very, very early when I became minister was to ensure that we have, one, a review of the island's attractions, but also a policy framework in order to advance and to initiate new attractions in Barbados. Of course, the attractions will be done across the new attractions across the island. And we're also proposing to work with the private sector to build out these attractions. If a destination is to remain competitive, if a destination is to maintain very high scores, it is important that we have attractions evolving. And therefore, part of the policy decisions taken is not only to enhance our attractions, but also to create new attractions. Like I said earlier, the investment will be private sector driven because we believe that is the way to go. We have a package of attractions, new attractions, that we believe will be very appealing to investors. And therefore, the work that Trove has commenced along with the ministry and its research arm, we will continue to do so. We're not focusing in the ministry on issuing a lot of grants. Oftentimes, this is the area that I am often questioned on, but respect to the funding that we get for the BTMI in particular. The funding that we get essentially is to market Barbados as a destination. And in a very competitive space where a lot of the marketing agencies are expending significant resources, we have now to be in a position to respond. And as emergencies and as shocks emerge, we have to be very nimble, we have to be very flexible in how we respond. But within the package that we're proposing for investors, and it also speaks to community investment. It's not speaking to large or medium-sized investors. We're talking about within constituencies where people can have an opportunity to invest in community projects and also benefit from what we're experiencing in terms of our expansion of the tourism sector. You will recall from time to time that I often say that I want the benefits of tourism to pour through, not to flow through, to pour through to ordinary people in the community. Because we recognize that if the benefits are pouring through, then it augurs well for the future of tourism. And as we continue to focus on the future of tourism, that will remain a cornerstone of our policy. I will pause and I will ask the Permanent Secretary who can detail, and perhaps you may wish to ask the Director of Research to assist as well with respect to a lot of the packages that Trove develop and that we are currently in discussion with the relevant agencies and potential investors. PS?
Thank you, Minister. When we sought to undertake this study, we wanted to look at how does Barbados attractions compete with the rest of the world. That study also confirmed for us that our profile of visitor tended to be the mature person. So we sought to strategize as to if we were going to bring more visitors and increase the retention of earnings on the island, what would be the approach taken? And we looked at the various age groups of the visitor, and we looked at what were their interests. And we were able to determine that some persons were interested in cultural and heritage. Some persons were interested in experiential tourism. And then the packages were designed to allow for persons who may be on the island for 6 days or on a few hours on a cruise ship or a day. So we were able to break down these packages and have them segmented further across constituencies. In fact, the study looked at by parish as well as by constituencies. And we came up with areas, for instance, you spoke about the rural part of the island, and we have attractions. We looked at Mount Hillaby, North Point Lighthouse, Terrell Court, Heritage Village, Rihanna Drive, Cherry Tree Hill, the Scotland District, the Barbados Trailways, and St. Lucie cycling routes, and even development opportunities within Spicestown. Bathsheba, Belle Plaine, Oistins, and so on. And we recognize that to help the movement of persons between particular attractions, we also needed to look at the transportation, how readily was transportation available, and that also presented an opportunity for someone to fill that gap, fill that space, and be able to offer that service, to be able to move a visitor, for instance, from Chalky Mount in St. Andrew over to Mount Hilby to have sight of the highest peak on the island and be able to take pictures there, even to visit Morgan Lewis, because our transportation system is not so designed to be able to move people in that way. So that came out for opportunities for entrepreneurial development, certainly at the community level. The signage to encourage persons to visit these particular less known attractions, and also for the marketing and promotion of these attractions on the various mediums. So we have what we develop as a green route. We have an island itinerary builder. We have the cultural events, and we have the beach and boardwalk to also support these particular attractions on the island. And we now are at the point where we will be engaging with the communities. That will also be part of our linkages specialist that is on board with us. So those meetings now have to be scheduled with the various communities to go in and get the buy-in so that they are in sync with the ministry in wanting to develop and promote those attractions that are within their specific communities. And then the next phase is to look at how do we provide...
Officer, you have the next phases that you have.
Okay. The financing to support these communities. And we will be looking at our international partners, apart from our own budgetary financing, to be able to support these institutions. Okay.
Thank you.
When you say engage communities, now you understand community, but you also understand that not everyone would be interested in participating in anything like this. So if you can just explain for the benefit of those persons who are at home who would want to be part of this exercise, how you envision these engagement sessions, how they would look, if it would require persons reaching out to the ministry, groups reaching out to the ministry, or would it be town halls set up within certain communities where you would want to develop the attractions? If you can just share some specifics as to how you're going to undertake this project.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. We have a clear plan with respect to how we intend to communicate with the public, and certainly within communities. We will have town hall meetings as well within communities, because largely there are also opportunities for investment that when we put on the table, that they will want to have some interaction with us. But I will ask the Permanent Secretary to briefly comment. Pierce?
Thank you, Minister. The intention is to also not only have the town hall meetings, but to also work through existing community groups. So for instance, you may have already, I know in St. Andrew, there's an active group that works in promoting crabbing. We have a crabbing festival that takes place. So you also have the different community groups that have been established, working through the ministry that falls under the Ministry of what used to be Community Development. So the intention is to work with the expertise that are already resident on the ground to help us to garner the interest, because we believe that if there is ownership in the community, it would augur well for the particular attraction to become more successful, because people will want to see it become successful because they want to be part of the promise. So we intend to first start with the town hall meetings, but also to engage with the local community groups that are already working and functioning well within these communities. Thank you.
For your response. I look forward to it.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I want to also echo the sentiment of all the members and the Minister for the fantastic job that he and his team have been doing. In fact, such a fantastic job that sometimes it heartens you to pass by the airport on the below side and see 4 or 5 planes there with passengers. Of course, it's good to see it from the outside, but you don't want to be one of those passengers waiting at the carousel to get your bags when you're on one of those planes, because that's the downside of it. And I'm going to speak about all things airport, so that we can, so that nexus will be there, Mr. Chair. And of course, I want to start with the most topical matter, which was the shutdown of the airspace that we recently experienced in Barbados, which was quite unfortunate, I thought. And I want to ask you, Minister, what measures are you putting in place that does not happen again? Because I would hate to imagine that 4 planes in the air and can't land or have to be diverted somewhere else. So can you share with the Parliament and, of course, the country at large as to what measures you're putting in place that we don't see that kind of shutdown of the airspace again?
Thank you, Honourable Member. I would have to be very careful because I cannot commit to you that these events will not happen. And therefore, matters related to industrial relations will always happen, as it does happen in any country around the world. What we are mindful of is that there are some issues that we have to address, matters relating to industrial relations as well. And we are, as I committed to the meeting that we had last Saturday morning, we are going to work through the issues. As it relates to future actions, clearly we are going to build and have more contingency planning because that is necessary for a destination. But it's not as a result of industrial relations only. We have to look to see, in the event, God forbid, that there are any catastrophic events, that we can maintain, obviously, the open airspace into Barbados. And we are going to be working with all stakeholders to address the issue as it relates to a contingency plan for the airport. Having said that, and as I indicated earlier, you will also, and from time to time, there will be industrial relations follow. But what we are trying to do, obviously, is to arrest and address those issues. In my opening remarks, I indicated, notwithstanding that we have in excess of 43 air traffic controllers built in, obviously, with some supervisors in there as well, a complement of 43 in terms of air traffic control. We are moving apace, commencing this forthcoming financial year, to increase the number of air traffic control officers. We intend to have 2 batches of air traffic controllers trained in Barbados. The training takes approximately, I think it's about 18 months or so, I've been advised. And we're also going to have a 3rd batch. So the strategy behind us training up and having more air traffic controllers is to address what we have as a shortage at airport. Now, I must also stress that notwithstanding the shortage of air traffic controllers, that Barbados continues to remain compliant with the International Civil Aviation Organization's regulations. So I want the message to go forth that at all times we have, and I will ask Mr. Glenn Blanchett to speak to this matter as well to bring further clarity as it relates to ICAO standards, operations at the airport. But we believe that the deficit that we currently are projecting to have some 26 additional posts that we, through the training, will address those. I might also remind the country that the shortage of air traffic control is not only applicable to Barbados. There are shortages across the globe. In fact, the Ministry of the Public Service last year would have posted an advertisement at the request of the ministry to have additional, or to seek to recruit additional air traffic controllers. And the challenge for us was one, to get those persons. So I will pause here and I will ask Mr. Glenn Blanchett, who is the Chief Air Traffic Control Officer, and I will also ask the CEO of the Grand Ems International Airport, Mr. Hadley Bourne, to weigh in as well. But I can also assure you, Honourable Member, that, for example, last Saturday, we would have had anywhere between 55 and 60 aircraft about to land in Barbados. We were fortunate in the sense that we secured and all landed the air-to-sea transfers, approximately, I think there were 7. We also had the double daily flights that came into Barbados, and we also had some other flights. Regrettably, as I indicated in my statement that was published last Sunday, we also had some aircraft that turned back. Others that could have continued en route to Barbados, but because of uncertainty, they didn't continue and they returned. And we also had some flight cancellations. It was, of course, it was going to be a very busy day for Grand Ems International Airport. But notwithstanding the disruption, we were able to obviously maintain control, particularly of those passengers who were coming into Barbados for the air-to-sea transfer as part of the cruise experience. I'll pause here and come back, but I'll ask Mr. Glenn Blanchett to speak to us in more fulsome terms as it relates to our ICAO standards and to address matters relating to what I call the tower, but he referred to it as air traffic. Mr. Blanchett?
Thank you, Minister. I just want to continue from where the Minister left off. We must acknowledge that, and the International Civil Aviation Organization has indicated that there's a global issue with respect to staff shortages. The international aviation bodies report that the crisis is widespread and is affecting almost every aspect of the world. So just to give some figures, in the United States, as early as this year, they have reached a critical level. Roughly 77% of US ATC facilities were short-staffed. In late 2025, approximately 50% of the busiest US airports reported significant staffing shortage. In Europe, we have France and Germany. Some facilities reported up to 25% of positions are vacant. That also pertains to Ireland, Spain, and United Kingdom. And here in the Caribbean, the small island nations often operate with only 15 to 30 controllers. And if you lose a few members, it can disrupt daily operations. So some of the suggestions by the International Civil Aviation Organization as to the primary cause, it relates to, one, because of the environment is highly stressed, you will find that controllers will retire early, or they will decide not to continue. Also medicals, we are regulated by medical, so air traffic controllers have to at least have a minimum level of medical fitness. And also in terms of training, it takes time to fully train an air traffic control officer, roughly 18 months. So because of the uniqueness of this job, the ICAO has also suggested some recommendations. One is continuous training, which we must do, and offering attractive packages to retain air traffic control officers. As the Minister said, we would have started a recruitment process in the third quarter of last year. The recruitment process was rigorous. It included aptitude testing, interviews, psychometric testing, and finally medicals. So we are at the stage now where we will accept 15 trainees into the school on April the 7th, and we will continue that training during the course of the year. It's critical that even although we may reach optimal levels, we can lose that quickly because of the factors that I would have mentioned earlier. As it relates to staffing and how the air traffic controllers function within the environment, as indicated, we are a highly regulated environment, and even as it relates to rostering, the regulation speaks clearly as to how air traffic controllers should be rostered. There is a rest period between shifts, so as to indicate our shifts will start at 7 a.m. and finish at 12:30. Then from 12:30 until 6, 6 until midnight, and midnight until 7. And our regulation speaks to a minimum rest period of 8 hours. However, persons who work 7 a.m. and come off at 12:30 will not be required to work until the next day, which should be the afternoon shift. So even although the regulation speaks to a minimum of 8 hours, controllers tend to get at least 24 hours rest period. And then within a 7-day period, you will get an off day. We're required also to work double shifts because we're currently short. And if you're required to work more than one shift, you then cannot return to work until you get the equivalent amount of hours that you would have worked. So even that is regulated, and we adhere to the regulations. We have the Civil Aviation Authority that provide oversight to our department and to ensure that we are compliant with the national regulations, also as it relates to the International Civil Aviation Organization's rules and regulation and procedures. Thank you.
And before I ask Mr. Hadley-Bourne to comment as well, I also, the Chief Air Traffic Control Chief perhaps forgot to announce that there will be a second batch of 15 trainees for air traffic controllers to join the program of training in December of this year. So we have 2 batches, one that will commence on April the 7th of this year, already identified, and then the second batch that will commence training in December of 2026. What I should also inform members as well, that within the estimates we have made provision for the training of additional air traffic controllers. We are proposing to send 25 trainees to be trained outside of Barbados. That is already according to the estimates. So in effect, what we will be doing is that we will, after we've completed the training, and based on the success, because that's also an issue, the success rate of training, we should be in a position, one, to fill the remaining vacancies. But at the same time, we have a policy for replacement of staff, either those who are poached and go to work elsewhere, those who retire, or those who resign from the organization. So I want the message to go there very clearly that we will be having a robust training program. We will be training in 3 batches, and that at the conclusion of the training, Barbados will have closed its air traffic control deficit. Mr. Bourne?
Good morning, honorable colleagues. Hadley Bourne, Chief Executive Officer, Grantley Adams International Airport. And notwithstanding what the Chief Air Traffic Controller alluded to as it relates to our compliance within ICAO, there's also a very critical aspect within the provision of air navigation services, which we call the acronym CNS, which stands for Communication, Navigation, and Surveillance. And the team at Grantley Adams International Airport within our engineering department and our electronics section have been working with the ministry and the ANS to also upgrade the equipment, because it's one thing to speak about deficiencies within the staffing complement, but we also had some deficiencies within our technology, and some was also very dated. So over the last 12 or so months we've been working. We've done a lot of research. And as the minister outlined in his opening remarks, there's going to be significant infrastructure and capex spent within that space. So we're going to be looking to implement a new MSSR, which is a monopole second surveillance radar, the ATS, the automated terminal information system, which is an automated piece of equipment that provides up-to-date and current information to pilots on their arrival in our airspace. I think what the minister forgot to mention earlier was also in relation to the AWAS. It forms part of the aviation meteorological infrastructure, and that's a project we're also doing with the Met Office to supplement the surveillance equipment. We're also looking to change our DVR, and most of these pieces of equipment are almost 20 years old, so they're very critical within the provision of the surveillance, but however, they were seeking challenges. We've also just completed a replacement of our ILS, which is the instrument landing system, and that has now undergone its critical testing, and we're just awaiting the final results within, and it's one of the complaints also that the air traffic controllers were also having is relation to our air-to-ground communications, and we've just completed a purchase of radios which are expected to land in the country between May and June. There's also a particular type of navigation provision where you use less ground-based, ad-based and performance-based navigation, and we're also looking to reintroduce and add that to our provision. In terms of modernization, we've just completed a siting study for a new air traffic control tower, which we anticipate once we meet all the regulatory requirements would come on stream also within the next financial year. That's it from me, Minister.
And thank you both. But what I want the country to take away from here is that there's a clear plan, a clear strategy for the improvement, not only replacing equipment that ought to have been replaced. And that's one of the challenges, and one of the things that I've made clear is that we're going to have to stick to a policy of replacement and to ensure that the replacement policy is done within the defined period, so as not to wait until we have a challenge and then we're focused to respond to that challenge.
Thank you very much, Minister.
One second, Minister.
Also,
Mr. Chair, I beg that you do not report progress to His Honour the Speaker. I beg for leave to sit again.
Question is that I do not report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. You think the ayes have it?
The chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable member for Christchurch East.
Sir, I beg to move the suspension of the chamber until 10 minutes to 12 o'clock, sir.
Until? Can't be 10 minutes. Honourable member, can't be 10 minutes to 12 because we're almost 10 minutes to 12.
Till 12, sir. Till 12.
The question is that this honourable chamber will be suspended until 12 noon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 12 noon.